Peace, family. It's your brother Marc Lamont Hill. Welcome to Night School. Every night here on the channel, Monday to Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Normally, we hold Night School, which again is a space for intense debate, urgent conversation, long-standing topics that we have to wrestle with. And we don't do the superficial talking points. We don't do the social media drive-by analysis. This ain't cable news. This is not a podcast. This is a global classroom. And tonight, the global classroom continues. We're going to continue to have rich conversation. We're going to continue to have a powerful dialogue. And the biggest question on everybody's mind for the last 3 days, certainly last 2 days, has been Vice President Kamala Harris. Everybody is talking about Vice President Kamala Harris because Vice President Kamala Harris, as you know, is now the Democratic Party's presumptive nominee for the presidency. That has not gotten less certain in the last 24 hours. It's gotten, in fact, more certain. Over the last 24 hours, more people have come forward and stepped forward and said that Kamala Harris is their choice for the nomination. You had Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer come forward, and they made it very clear. Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer made it very clear that she is their person. You had Democrats all around the country say Kamala Harris is our person. The people most likely to step up and challenge her, people like the Blue Dog Democrats, the independents who caucus with Democrats, both from the left and the right, whether it's Manchin or whether it's Bernie Sanders, they both seem to be standing with Vice President Harris. So with that being the case, Kamala Harris is now on what seems to be a unavoidable, immovable track toward the presidential nomination for the Democratic Party. We can talk about whether that is democratic or not. We can talk about whether that's fair or not. And in fact, just last night, Cenk Uygur from the Young Turks was here on the show talking about that. I encourage you all to go back and watch that episode as well. And there's a lot of conversation about whether or not this is a fair process, whether or not an open primary would be the only way to have a legitimately fair or democratic process for the Democratic Party's nomination. But that is all water under the bridge right now. Not because it doesn't matter, but because it seems to be a fait accompli. You know, it seems as if at this point, the Democratic Party is moving forward. There have been 2 days back to back of extraordinarily large, well-attended online calls, Black women for Kamala, Black men for Kamala the next night, large-scale fundraising. We see youth movements, college students movement. They ain't back on campus yet, and they already stumping for Kamala Harris. So Kamala Harris is getting a lot of mainstream liberal support, but that mainstream liberal support doesn't negate her record. It doesn't negate the past. It doesn't negate the legitimate questions that persist about who Kamala Harris is and what her nomination will mean, not just for the Democratic Party, but for the country. And so we're going to have all of that conversation tonight. Also tonight, we're going to take some live questions and answers. So if you have questions and answers that you want, or if you have questions you want answers to, or answers that you want challenged, or you want to push back on something I've said, feel free to write down your questions. If you throw in a super chat or a super sticker or one of those super things, you'll get priority, and I'll make sure that I answer your question and read your question online. So make sure you drop those in, because we want to absolutely, on this episode of Night School, take some questions from the class. While you're here, by the way, as we get started, make sure you also check in and let us know where you're coming from. We are growing every single night here. So first of all, hit the subscribe button since we're growing. Hit the subscribe button. Don't be one of them lurkers. Come through, hit subscribe, put your feet up. Drop your name in the comments, as well as the city that you're writing in from. What city? And if you want, tell us the state, tell us the country that you're writing in from. If it's not a country, if it's a village, if it's whatever it is, you write in, or if it's not a city, it's a village, whatever, just write it in. But let us know where you're coming from, because this is a global classroom and we want to really know who we're in conversation and community with. Make sure you hit that like button as well. The Instagram algorithms need to know that we up, and that we're fighting back against corporate media by showing them that we have a footprint here too. And of course, if you're on Instagram later on, make sure you Follow our Instagram account, Night School MLH. We about to get started. You see, I got my beverages, I got my energy drink here. I ain't gonna tell you who makes it because don't nobody pay me to sell stuff. But I got my energy drink all set up. I got my water all set up. So we're gonna get it popping here tonight, y'all. Let's start with the first topic, which of course is Israeli war criminal Benjamin Netanyahu. Y'all know him. He is the prime minister of Israel. He is a known liar and suspected war criminal. And he is wildly unpopular in his own country of Israel right now. So, what's he do? Benjamin Netanyahu is coming to DC. Now, you might ask why, right? Why would Benjamin Netanyahu decide all of a sudden to come to Washington, D.C., particularly at a moment where he's so wildly unpopular, where he has so much unrest domestically? Why would he take his time to travel to D.C.? Well, the specific reason, the formal reason, is that Bibi will be giving a speech to a joint meeting of Congress. And he's, as I said, so unpopular at home. It's very clear he's trying to garner support around the country, around the United States, I mean, and he's also trying to garner support around the globe as Israel continues to prosecute an illegal and genocidal war in Palestine. That's an important thing for us to know and an important thing for us to understand as we talk about Netanyahu's trip to DC. Now, his visit doesn't just come as his popularity is plummeting. The visit also comes as Gaza's death toll continues to surge. And we'll talk about the Gaza death toll in just a little bit with our War on Gaza report. But the number is close to 40,000 conservatively. That's not counting people under the rubble. That's not counting people who haven't been detected. 40,000 people dead. There have been new deaths reported among hostages, Israeli hostages, and people who Israel's trying to pursue, trying to return home. They've been killed as well by Hamas. And despite that, Benjamin Netanyahu seems wholly uninterested in ending the massacre. It's been 9 months and counting. The devastation is obvious. The violence, the gruesome loss of life is apparent. The whole world is speaking up, and Bibi Netanyahu is not doing anything about it. At least nothing substantive, except turning up the screws, except continuing to pretend to be doing a diplomatic solution, except pretending that a ceasefire is imminent. These are the things that he is claiming. And so against the backdrop of that, it's very, very challenging, very, very challenging for anybody to take Bibi's trip to DC seriously. So why do it now? And why is the US Congress allowing it to happen now? Well, Benjamin Netanyahu's strategy is quite clear and quite easy. Netanyahu needs support. And every single day that this genocidal war in Gaza is continued, more and more people around the country, more and more people around the world are saying, wait a minute, this is wrong. This is unjustifiable. No matter what you think about what happened on October 7th, there's absolutely no defensible way that you can explain the grossly disproportionate response by Israel, the indiscriminate response by Israel. You say you're going for Hamas, and yet 2/3 of the people killed are women and children. So many non-combatants. In the last week or two, we've seen 9 or 10 schools bombed. And school wasn't in session, but they were holding people who've been unhoused. They were holding non-combatants. They were holding people who were looking for shelter. And so as this is happening, the world is noticing. When humanitarian aid is blocked, the world is noticing. The International Court of Justice continues to issue ruling after ruling that does not stand in Israel's favor. Warrants are being petitioned for members of the Israeli government, Yoav Gallant in particular, Itamar Ben-Gvir in particular, and Benjamin Netanyahu in particular, as well as members of Hamas. These warrants are being issued because of the war crimes that have been committed. That's what the ICC is all about, even though they usually focus on Africa and not European nations or first world nations. But that's another story for another time. The point is, Netanyahu is clearly operating in a manner that is alienating himself and the country of Israel from the global community. So they have no choice but to try to regain support. And what does Netanyahu do when he wants to regain support? He always comes back to the United States, because the United States is always going to be good to him. The last time we saw Netanyahu make a move like this, it was when President Obama was in office. And at that time, he was showing up Obama. He was effectively saying, I don't need to listen to Obama. I can go around you and speak to your country, speak to your nation. I can go around you, and there's nothing you can do about it, Obama. Now, with Trump, they had their own little bromance, so there was no need for this type of recalcitrance. There was no need for this type of disrespect. There was no need for this type of circumvention. He ain't have to do that. But why does the Congress respond this way? Well, they ain't got a whole lot of options. Part of running for mainstream office, when you're running as a member of one of these two corporate wings of the same bird, Democrat and Republican, is you adopt and agree with the notion that Israel is our friend and there's not an inch of daylight between us and Israel, and therefore whatever Israel does, we stand by. If that is the mantra, you ain't got no choice but to show up when Netanyahu comes. And when Netanyahu comes and makes a case to the United States about why you shouldn't do an Iran deal as he did before, or he makes a case for why you need to continue to arm them, or as he's always done, or if he makes a case for why Hamas is still in control and this war in Gaza has to continue. Whenever he makes these cases, people have to be there, because if you're not there, it makes you look like you don't stand with Israel. And if you don't stand with Israel, you can't be a successful American politician. If you stand there with him, then you're complicit in to a certain extent, right? So you got to pick your battle. You got to pick your poison. You got to make your choice about how you're going to respond to Netanyahu. But Netanyahu standing up and doing that is a huge, huge deal. Now, it ain't like it used to be, though. And I'll tell you about that. Let's talk about that. There was a time when a Netanyahu appearance meant everybody was there. But now, it's different. By the way, if you're just joining night school, welcome. Make sure you hit the like button. Tell your classmates where you're joining in from the chat. Many top Democrats in Congress are boycotting Benjamin Netanyahu's speech in protest of his genocidal war in Palestine, in Gaza in particular. Vice President and likely Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris is also going to skip the address. As you know, as vice president, she is president pro tem of the Senate, and she's supposed to be there not just attending, but presiding over the address. But Kamala Harris is doing something different. She is not meeting with him. Now, that's not surprising. Kamala Harris is not a fan of Benjamin Netanyahu, and Netanyahu ain't a fan of Kamala Harris, and Netanyahu ain't been on the best terms with Joe Biden recently either. But it's not just because of this war. Netanyahu has never been hesitant to criticize Democratic administrations, including Biden's. He basically hated Obama. And the reason is because any pushback against the Israeli government is viewed as an act of disloyalty, an act of treachery, an act of anti-Semitism. You add to the list of things. And so Netanyahu has successfully made Democrats seem as if they are disloyal to Israel at every moment, even as they continue to dump billions of dollars into Israel's coffers, just like Republicans. So this ain't the first time that we've seen this, that Netanyahu is going to come and try to show up a Democratic administration by talking and flexing directly to Congress. In 2015, during another speech to Congress, he attacked President Obama's nuclear deal with Iran, as I mentioned, in an effort to get lawmakers to kill it. It's not clear exactly what Netanyahu was going to say during the speech, But chances are it's going to be for a renewed crackdown on anti-genocide speech. Again, policing our language, policing our political discourse. He's also going to ask for more money to continue Israel's genocidal war on Gaza, and also to stoke fears uh, of holding Israel accountable to The Hague's recent ruling, calling for the end to the occupation, not just in Gaza, but in the West Bank. The ICJ stood up last week and said that what Israel is doing in the West Bank occupied territories is illegal. So, against the backdrop of all that, I see why Kamala Harris doesn't want to stand there and simply preside over that session. It ain't like you can ask questions. It ain't like there's a debate portion of the program. And at a moment where she's trying to recover votes and she's trying to create some kind of olive branch with voters who are very upset with how President Biden has enabled this genocidal war in Gaza, it makes sense that she's going to pull out. And for a lot of people, that is a positive sign that Vice President Harris is not going to show up to this congressional session. But here's the rub. She's still going to meet with him. She's still going to meet with Netanyahu. Instead of being in the Senate or in the joint session of Congress, she's going to meet with him privately. That's not a good sign. That's not a good sign. There's nothing wrong with leaders of nations meeting. There's nothing wrong, even if you fully and thoroughly disagree with somebody, there's nothing wrong with taking a meeting with them. That's actually kind of what you're supposed to do, in my estimation, right? None of this, we only talk to our friends, we ignore our enemies approaches. No, I think you talk to everybody, because the United States doesn't do a good job of determining who a legitimate friend is or what a legitimate enemy is. So I am okay. I am entirely okay saying meet with Netanyahu and have the conversation. But here's the problem. The United States has never been a fair broker in the Middle East. It's not just Israel. The United States has been an unfair broker with Egypt, an unfair broker with Iran, an unfair broker with Saudi, an unfair broker with Syria, an unfair broker with Iraq. You name the country, we have been unfair. The United States doesn't have feelings. It only has interests in the Middle East. Doesn't have any friends. It only has clients. And so when that's the calculus, when that's the framework, it's very difficult to ascertain what exactly the United States is doing out there. And when the meeting happens with Bibi behind the scenes, we have every reason to believe that a meeting between Vice President Harris and Prime Minister Netanyahu is not going to be one where she's going to be criticizing him for illegal war tactics, that she's going to be calling him to the carpet for carpet bombing, that she's going to be telling him you can't destroy hospitals and you can't continue to raid refugee camps and then tell us you want a peace agreement. That would be a wonderful thing, but there's nothing in Kamala Harris's history. There's nothing in the Democratic Party's history. There's nothing in the American presidential establishment's history to make us think that that's what's happening. There's simply no precedent for that kind of thinking. And so, no, I don't feel good about the private meeting. I'm not mad at the private meeting. Again, all people have private meetings. I'm not saying there's some secret, mustache twirling conspiracy happening. I'm simply saying that there's such a lack of transparency historically with the United States' foreign policy record that I can't trust that what the United States is brokering or promising to broker is actually going to come to fruition. So no, we shouldn't feel good about this. We shouldn't be excited about this. We shouldn't be proud about this. And in the next couple of days, we're going to continue to unpack Vice President Harris's record on a range of issues, from law enforcement to Israel-Palestine, to women's reproductive justice. All these issues must be thoroughly and carefully unpacked. We are not coronating anybody. We are not walking up in here saying we're giving the nomination to anybody. We weren't going to give it to Joe Biden. I'm not giving it to Kamala Harris. I'm not giving it to Donald Trump. I'm going to analyze. I'm going to critique. I'm going to challenge. You all can make your own decisions, but we need to make those decisions with actual data right now. We're not going to somehow pretend that Kamala Harris is now a Palestinian liberation warrior. Now, we don't have to pretend that she is exactly the same as Joe Biden on every issue either. I think there has to be room for for the nuance and room for the conversation, but we're going to do that conversation with honesty. And so, look, I appreciate what the signal that she is sending by not showing up to the joint session of Congress. I think she's sending the right message. But that message isn't enough if you meet with him privately, because that could simply signal I ain't a member of Congress and I'm not just a president pro tem of Senate. I am the next commander in chief. I am the next head of state, and therefore we're going to meet privately with heads of state. It might be more about her own campaign branding than it is a principal position on Israel Palestine. I don't want to be presumptuous. I don't want to assume what her reason is. But what I will say is we're going to figure it out. We're going to talk to her, and hopefully she'll come on night school. Wouldn't that be dope, y'all? It would be pretty dope. If Kamala Harris stepped up in the night school and we had the kind of conversation that we need to have. Maybe she'll do it. She has promised me interviews in the past, personally. So maybe now's the time to call her up on it. I don't know. Let's make it happen. Anyway, it's not enough that Joe Biden is out of office in what, 6 months? Less than that, whatever the math is on January till now. 4 or 5 months. The United States doesn't just need a new driver. The United States needs a new direction. The new direction that the United States needs means radical shifts in our policy positions. So, is Kamala Harris's ascendancy, I'm going to ask that one more time. Is Kamala Harris's candidacy and her campaign for the presidency a signal that the United States' policy on Israel and Palestine is changing? It's a question. It's an important question. It's a necessary question. It's a question that I'm not sure we're prepared to answer just yet. But it's one that is becoming more and more urgent, because before it was an abstract question about what Kamala Harris might think about the world. We were just speculating. But right now we are facing an election cycle. And months before Biden dropped out of the race, Democrats were already anxious. They were concerned that President Biden's unshakable support of Israel and its war on Gaza would cost him the election. Why? Because of Muslim voters, because of other brown voters, because of college voters, because of other young voters. It just wasn't looking good for them. In March, a CARE survey showed that 72% of Muslim Super Tuesday voters disapproved of Biden's handling of the genocide in Gaza. Muslim Americans, of course, voted overwhelmingly for the Democratic ticket in 2020. But in battleground states that Biden won by razor-thin margins, Arab and Muslim voters, who make up a huge part of the electorate, are drawing a line in the sand. I'm talking about Arizona, Georgia, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and of course, Michigan. In those states, voters were like, look, we're not rocking with you. We're not supporting you. Until you make a different policy choice, we're going to make a different voting choice. Right now, we're uncommitted. If you want us to be committed to you, then you got to commit to us. This is the position. They didn't vote Trump. They didn't wreck an election, as some of y'all like to say when y'all go around vote shaming people. They simply said, we're not voting Trump in the primary. And if you want us to change our position for the general, you're going to have to do something radically different. Now, Kamala Harris allegedly represents that something different. If you look back at Harris's actions in weeks following October 7th, just as an example, the vice president announced the development of, quote, the first ever U.S. national strategy to counter Islamophobia. So after October 7th, rather than simply blaming Muslims, rather than simply blaming Palestinians rather than simply uh, continuing to pile on the tropes, these Islamophobic tropes and the anti-brown tropes. Kamala Harris did something very different. She included Islamophobia in the conversation. She acknowledged that Islamophobia is something that is central to our discourse here in the United States. In fact, she also said this about a month after Hamas was attacked. She said, for years, Muslims in America and those perceived to be Muslim, which is an important point here. It's not Islamophobia isn't just about Muslims, it's about people who people think are Muslim. If you're Sikh and you get beat up after something happens in the world and people think they're beating up Muslims, you're still the target of Islamophobia. Anyway, for years, Muslims in America and those perceived to be Muslim have endured a disproportionate number of hate-fueled attacks. As a result of the Hamas terrorist attack in Israel and the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, we've seen an uptick in anti-Palestinian, anti-Arab, anti-Semitic, and Islamophobic incidents across America, including the brutal attack of a Palestinian American woman who was Muslim and the killing of her 6-year-old son. Well, that's not the most radical message. She's just saying, like, let's not be racist to anybody. But when I tell you, the world did not take that so well. Jewish people in America in particular did not do well on the whole with Vice President Kamala Harris's response. The announcement came after a poll commissioned by the Arab American Institute saw Biden's support sink to 17% among Arab Americans. So Kamala Harris is coming out speaking on this at that time, in again, about November, maybe a month after the October 7th attacks, because Muslim voters, Arab voters, were like, what are y'all doing? Where's the support? At that time, 40% said they would vote for Trump. So the question is, what does all this mean? We know, at the very least, that Kamala Harris is willing to stand up and speak out against Islamophobia, to speak out against racism against Palestinians, if the polls suggest it. Now, whether that's a legitimate feeling she has or whether it's always a political calculus, I don't know. I'm not in her head. What I can tell you is there's a direct relation between what the polls say and what these politicians be doing. So, in light of that, we have to ask substantive questions. On the internet right now, especially on Twitter, people are saying, oh, Kamala Harris is much more progressive on Palestine than Joe Biden. Where are the receipts? I have literally heard Kamala Harris defend the formation of the state of Israel, basically defend the Nakba. I have heard Kamala Harris repeatedly talk about the importance of Israel being created and the necessity of a Jewish state, but not just a state that protects Jewish people, but really a Jewish ethno state. She's talking about the formation of Israel as it is right now. That is a problem. Kamala Harris called for a ceasefire. People on internet say, oh my God, look at Kamala Harris. She's not like Joe Biden. She's demanding a ceasefire. First of all, if y'all think that Kamala Harris made that statement and Joe Biden wasn't behind it, that wasn't a heavily orchestrated and curated conversation and speech, y'all out your mind. I promise you, Kamala Harris didn't say nothing about Israel, Palestine, Gaza, or October 7th without the approval and the handwritten notes coming from the big homie. And let's also be clear, Kamala Harris wasn't calling for a permanent ceasefire. She was calling for a long humanitarian pause. She was calling for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, maybe 5 weeks of no violence. But by Kamala Harris's, demand, Israel will be right back at it in a couple weeks or a couple months. There would be no permanent ceasefire. It would only be a temporary one. That's what everybody wanted anyway, or was willing to do anyway, except Netanyahu's crazy behind, right? So people, even the allies of Israel were like, okay, you got to take a little break, y'all. Let people breathe. Let people get to safe havens, etc. That means nothing if you're going to start the war. It means even less if you're not going to disrupt the status quo on Israel Palestine. We'll talk about this more in the week, but to start, what are the policy shifts that people expect to see? This is where it becomes very important to understand that the United States' position on Israel has been bipartisan. Democrats just pretend to be willing to do something else. I'll give you an example. The Jerusalem Embassy Act. The Jerusalem Embassy Act was signed under the Clinton administration. A lot of people say, oh, Donald Trump moved the U.S. Embassy from from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, signaling that they don't respect the international status quo. They don't respect Palestine's right to East Jerusalem at a minimum. They don't see a two-state solution, including Palestine, including Jerusalem for Palestinians. You can make all these claims based on the fact that Donald Trump moved the embassy, right? That most of the international community does not respect East Jerusalem as being Israel's. They say that it is contested. It is disputed. Why is this relevant? Well, because Donald Trump moves the embassy there, which Netanyahu loved. He probably gave him a big wet one, right? The next time he saw him for doing that. And so people say, look, see, Donald Trump is doing more craziness. No, but the Jerusalem Embassy Act was actually signed under Bill Clinton. And then what they did was, because nobody wants to go down for Israel-Palestine in this country as a presidential candidate, they said, well, we'll make a waiver. And every 6 months or so, you can sign the waiver, and then you don't have to move the act. But the Jerusalem Embassy Act was signed and approved by Congress and the President William Jefferson Blythe Clinton, Bill Clinton. And so signing the bill is one thing, because you get all the credit from the Zionists and from the right wing for doing it. But then when it's time to actually move the embassy, you just sign the waiver saying, we'll wait another 6 months. The entire Clinton presidency, they waited those 6 months. The entire George Bush era, they signed the waiver and kicked the ball down the field. The entire, after George Bush was Obama, the entire Obama administration, they refused similarly to move the embassy. They just kept signing the waiver. So when you look at Donald Trump as somebody who radically changed Israel-Palestine, you have to understand he just did what they all promised to do. He didn't do, him acknowledging the goal line. All these things are things that Democrats and Republicans have committed and promised to do. So I say all that to say, and I promise you'll see these dots connect. Kamala Harris might be as progressive as any Democrat ever on Israel-Palestine. That is such a low bar. Saying that she'll be better than Trump is not saying much. But the question is she actually better than Trump on this issue? Nothing she has said suggests that she's better. Now, we know Donald Trump, he has no driving ideological force behind him. He is simply wants to control the world. He wants to amass power, and all the ideologues, whether it's the John Boltons or the past or whoever, they weigh in with their ideologies, and their ideology shaped the presidency, but it's not Trump's. So when you say a shift, will Kamala Harris signal a shift in U.S.-Israel policy? It's like, it's not just enough to have the policy. You also have to be willing to execute and implement the policy. And you also have to ask yourself, well, what is our end goal here? Because you don't even know if you've made progress on Israel-Palestine if you don't know what the goal is. If I looked at the Oslo Accords of 93, or I looked at the Clinton Accords of 2000, and I looked at it, I said, well, look, here's what they were trying to do. It's great. Someone could easily pick that apart and show how what I thought was progress isn't, or vice versa. So what is our end goal? If our end goal from the Clinton Accords, or from even Oslo, earlier, 7 years earlier, if the goal is a real Palestinian state and two-state solution, or a one-state reality solution because of the one-state reality, that's all. Whatever you all say is up to y'all. But my point is, If I don't know what your goal is, I can't assess if you have been successful. I can't succeed. I can't assess if you're making progress toward that goal. But I'm not optimistic. I'll just say that. So, when it comes to Kamala Harris in U.S. Israel policy, I'm not sure that there will be a radical change, but there has at least be radical speech. There at least has to be. There at least has to be progressive. I'll just say it. Let me simplify this even more. At the end of the day, Kamala Harris has to articulate a policy agenda on every issue. Where do you stand on reparations? Where do you stand on abortion? Where do you stand on defunding and abolition? Where do you stand on these issues? And the only thing I want to see are her answers. And the only thing I'm going to assess those answers against is her actual conduct. I don't care who she's married to. I don't care about all these ancillary and superficial things about, who you're married to and all that. I don't want to hear about any of that. I'm going to give Kamala Harris the fairest shot possible and ask her what her positions are. And I just need the answers to that. It's that simple. Anyway, y'all, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back with the War on Gaza report and another tidbit that I bet you didn't know. But also keep your questions coming in. If you're going to write tonight into me with a question, get that question ready now because you might need some time to think about this. Make it a good one. And of course, again, please use the super chat button to send those questions so that I can answer them and everyone else can see what you asked. All right, family, I'll be right back with a lot more of Night School. All right, family, welcome back to Night School. It has been such a crazy week or two when it comes to the presidential cycle. It's been a crazy week when it comes to Israel and Gaza. It has been a crazy day, a crazy week, month, year when it comes to all of these issues. And so I think the best thing that we could do right now is to remain in constant and steady dialogue, with one another. And that's why every single night here on Night School, I take your questions. It's why I take your comments. It's why I make sure that we have the conversations that we have, because I need you all to not just listen to me ram on and on, right? When we talk about this is Night School. And the greatest educational theorist in the world, the greatest educational theorist in the world, the most radical visionaries of how to teach and learn tell us that it's not enough to have a banking model. It's not enough for me to just yap. I also have to listen. I also have to create space for dialogue. It has to be dialogical, as the great Paulo Freire said. So make sure you send your questions in. Make sure you send your comments in. Make sure you let us know what's working and what's not working for you for the show. How do you like Night School so far? You're approving of what we're doing. What would you like to see more of? What kind of guests would you like to see? What kind of conversations would you like to see? What would you like me to do more or less of? Let me know all of that stuff, and we will cover it. In the meantime, it's time for us to talk about the war on Gaza. Israel's war on Gaza reaches day 291. That's right. Day 291 of Israel's ongoing war with Gaza. That means we're approaching basically 10 months of a genocidal war in the Gaza Strip. That is not a war against Palestinians, it's a war on Palestinians. It's not a fight in the Palestinians, in Gaza Strip. It's a fight against the people of the Gaza Strip. It's a war on Gaza, not a war in Gaza. And so every single night here on the channel, we make sure we cover the war on Gaza with the latest updates. We do things that corporate media don't do. We cover stories that mainstream outlets refuse to acknowledge, and we do that every single night for the purpose of achieving justice. The War on Gaza report tonight begins, as it always begins, with the numbers. As of today, as of this moment, more than 39,090 people have been killed in Israel's war on Gaza since October 7th. Again, 39,090 people. That is a hair away from 40,000. And on top of those numbers, 90,147 people have been injured. That's not counting the 10,000 people who lay under the rubble. That's not counting the people who have been undercounted. There is so much death. And we make sure that we cover not just the raw numbers of who died, but to give you a sense of the how and the why. And for the last few weeks, the War on Gaza report has been bloated with many, many mass deaths. We don't even get to go a day without dozens, much less a day with no deaths. Well, the shooting and the deaths have continued. Israeli tanks fired on Palestinians who are fleeing eastern Khan Yunis, as the UN says Israel's latest evacuation order forces Palestinians into just 20% of the land in the Gaza Strip. So Khan Yunis is toward the south, is in the south. And in the eastern part, Israeli tanks are jumping in. This is not the first time that this has happened. We saw it in Rafah. We saw it in Khan Yunis. It happens a lot in the south where they basically say, we're going to run in there and have a military mission to kill the bad guys. They never make it clear who the bad guys are, not specific and clear. And it's only after they get killed do they tell you, well, oh, that was a bad guy. How you know? Well, because we killed him. It's that circular kind of logic. But what's happened now, again, with the world watching, is they say, oh, we're the world's most moral army. We don't just go in and kill people. We give them a day's notice. We let people know. Back before the war, they would talk about roof knocking, where they would drop an explosive non-munition on the roof. And when people hear that, they know to get out of there. And they say, oh, we give them 24 hours. We give them, X number of time. We do all these things. It's not true. Not all the time. Regularly, people are dying because they can't get to a hospital. Regularly, people are dying because they were told to evacuate and they had 24 hours to evacuate. And then 6 hours later, 8 hours later, they're getting hit with bombs because they were supposed to have a safe corridor. This is the reality that we're dealing with. So this is no surprise. The Khan Yunis, once again, is being attacked in that kind of way. The UN is sending teams to test Palestinians for polio after traces were found in water in Khan Yunis, which Israel now has forced people to evacuate. There in Deir el-Belah. Wow. You don't get hit with bullets. You don't die of starvation. And now they're saying there's polio in the water. I mean, polio. My God. Anyway, Antonio Guterres, who's the UN chief, welcomes the National Unity Government Plan that was signed by numerous Palestinian factions, including Hamas and Fatah. They did this in China, if you don't know about it. Again, today, a major move toward unity between Fatah, which is a political party that typically operates out of the West Bank. They are basically the dominant ruling party of the Palestinian Authority and ultimately the PLO. But the fact that they're all unifying with Hamas means that there's a great chance that Hamas could end up gaining a large footprint when this war is over, or that the Palestinian Authority will get it all. But whatever, I don't care. It's not my business to care who's in charge. I leave that to the Palestinian people. But what I do think about is the fact that the fragments, the gaps in our movements and struggles, whether it's ideological, whether it's geographical, whatever, that's where our open enemies and our exploiters prey on us. And so when you see Hamas and Fatah not getting along, I mean, that's part of how, anyway, that's another story for another time. But at the end of the day, seeing Hamas and Fatah come together is incredibly exciting. It's incredibly inspiring. And it's a reminder of what's possible when you have a common critique, when you have a common institutional enemy. I'm not talking about people, I'm talking about institutions. When you have that, when you share that, it makes this whole thing just a little bit different. Anyway, that is the War on Gaza report today. That is the update. We'll have more tomorrow, talking specifically about our Jewish American brothers and sisters and what they're doing on the ground lately. We're going to talk about President Biden's what we think might be a farewell address. We're going to talk about all of these things with you on the War on Gaza report, and more broadly, we're going to talk about it with you on Night School. Anyway, it's time now for us to take one more quick break. When we come back, we're going to take some live questions and answers. I'm going to give you the A's to your Q's, and then we're going to call it a night. But stay here because the live Q&A is so much fun and it's so interesting. And again, make sure you drop in a question right now. Use the super chat function, and we'll make sure your question gets read. All right, peace. All right, family, welcome back to Night School. We got time for live Q&A. I see some folks saying that they need some seconds to think about their questions. Think about your questions. I'm going to take a couple, and we're going to keep going. All right, y'all? Hold on one second. All right, y'all. Let's see what we got here. Wow. I was expecting a question on Israel Palestine, on neo-colonialism, on racial capitalism, something maternal justice. But the Bunny writes in and says, "Who do you think you are with your haircut and your LL Cool J lip gloss? We see you, Professor." All right, first of all, I'm not wearing lip gloss. No judgment by anybody that wears lip gloss. I'm not wearing lip gloss. I don't do lip gloss. My lips are perpetually chapped. My hands are perpetually ashy. Not at this moment, but often. So I wish actually that I could say that I was rocking the gloss. But I'm not. But I did get a haircut today. I needed a haircut, but like I said, it's been crazy dealing with some family stuff and just not unable to get one. So I was like, I looked at myself and said, it's time. Even my barber, I felt like he wanted to charge me double tonight because of that, man. So I get it. I'm sorry. I'm looking. If I look distracted, it's because I'm getting notes about the baby. The baby's asleep, but he woke up according to the baby monitor, but he went back to sleep. That is progress. All right, y'all. Let's see what else we got here in terms of questions and answers. It says, I have heard the opinion that because we aren't truly democracy, one vote majority rules, we shouldn't engage in voting at all due to the illegitimate process, and both parties are not for working class. Thoughts? I could not disagree more. I could not disagree more with this thought process. Tina, thank you for the wonderful question. Yes, America is not a democracy for lots of reasons. At the core, money drives our politics way too much for this to be anything close to a real democracy. We don't pick the best person, we pick the richest person. Then you have the institutional things like the Electoral College, which are outmoded and outdated now. create a situation where the person with the most votes doesn't win. I get that. These are corporate parties fighting to see who is going to be the business manager of the neoliberal, sexist, patriarchal, hyper capitalist, empire. And no matter who you pick, they all serve the same class interests. No matter who you pick, they all are ultimately not going to fight for the poorest among us. None of them are going to end imperial war. None of them are going to dismantle capitalism. None of them are going to do the things necessary for us to be who we could be as a society. That's all true. But damn it, I refuse to believe. No, I refuse to pretend. I know this. I refuse to pretend that these are all the same. Because if you say we're not going to vote at all because it's an illegitimate process, that presumes that the outcome of that tactic is better for us than voting. But if you look at the powerful and what they do, they win by the margin of us who don't vote. So in other words, it does not serve the ruling class for a bunch of poor people to vote. It does not serve the ruling class for a bunch of black people to vote. So to me, just based on the fact that it undermines their interest for us to be in the electoral process, I'm saying let's be in the electoral process. Also, I don't want to pretend that all the candidates are the same. There is a substantive difference between how our world will be under Donald Trump and how our world will be under, say, Kamala Harris or Claudia Ortiz or Cornel West or Jill Stein, right? There's a fundamental difference among each candidate and how our world is going to operate. I cannot pretend that that is not the case. Even the parties that say they're for the vulnerable, I mean, there's always still a critique, even if they're being honest and accurate about that. But when it comes to the corporate parties, the Democrats and Republicans, they're not even serving our interests. Anyway, all that to say, if we sit this out, if all the poor people sit this out, if all the black people sit this out, if all the brown people sit this out, if all the LGBTQ folks sit this out, if all the, the college students sit this one out, that doesn't force the hand of our open enemies. If anything, it enables them. They already want to disenfranchise us so that they can get their agendas across. If Donald Trump isn't president for 4 years, we don't get a Supreme Court that during Biden's years could take affirmative action away, could take away reproductive justice, abortion specifically, that could take away any kind of reasonable checks and balances on the presidency itself. So I vote as a tactic. I vote the way Baldwin talked about it in 1980 as a means of buying time. I'm not telling you who to vote for. I'm simply saying we got to vote to do something as a tactic. And to say we're not going to legitimize this process. Most of the processes and institutions in America ain't legitimate. But we participate in the ones that we need to in order to survive. And I think this is another way that we collectively need to survive. Chad from Massachusetts asks, any hope of bringing in Noda Arakat on the legal aspects of the ongoing genocide, especially after formal recognition of Israel as an illegal occupier? 1,000%. The goal is to bring Noda Arakat on very, very soon. Noda's a dear friend, and we've been in constant we've been in steady communication. I just spoke to her 2 days ago. I would love to get Noda on. She's our most requested guest, and she will come on. She was doing a little vacation at the time, and I would say in the next 2 weeks we'll do something for sure. I'm looking forward to it. Someone else asked for somebody else. Someone asked for Jemima Pierre, and I was like, it's so funny. When y'all asked for Jemima Pierre, and we actually have Jemima Pierre scheduled tentatively to come in the next couple of weeks. So again, some of it is you ask, we give you, and some of it is the people you're asking for, we're already doing. So I'll take both. Rosability asked for a private members only chat just to talk about channel ideas and feedback. I'm down with that. Let's do that soon. I'm 100,000% down with that. Let's make that happen. Let me see. Can I just get a shout out, Mark? Just joined the Climate Action Corps for a year. Going to be making video work around community gardens and green infrastructure in LA. Appreciate you much. Alex Michelle, here's your shout out. Thank you, my brother. Thank you, family, for your work. First of all, for your generous donation, but also for your work. Doing work around climate justice and climate action is so important and so underappreciated and so undersupported. So we thank you for everything that you're doing, for real. Riverside John said, "Can we get your feedback on the Sonia Massey vid? I'm one of those who wish you would put some of the focus back on the Black community. It's all about Gaza and the presidential race lately." Well, it's been about the presidential race for like 3 days because it's the biggest story in America. To be honest, the Massey video I plan to cover today, we just ran out of time in terms of planning, and I want to give it the attention it deserves. So tomorrow night, you'll see it, or I'll do a special earlier in the day on that exclusively. There's about 2 other stories that I want to cover exclusively, and I take your feedback seriously. So I'll make sure we have even more Black stories, Black centered stories. I feel like we do them every night and every day on the channel, not always on Night School, but always on the channel. But I'll do more. I respect your feedback, and I want to make sure we do more. Thank you for your feedback. Let's see here. James Carville is a hoot. I would love to see him on here. What do you think of him? I think he's a hoot too. I don't always agree with him. I think his politics are a little too centrist and middle of the road for me. But I think he's a great guest. I think he's very smart. He was my colleague at CNN. I'd love to have James Carville on. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. Again, it's easy. You ask and you shall receive. Shout out to Danny C for joining the channel as a member. Thank you so much. Have you ever seen the drop site news story of a leaked UN report claiming nearly 400 UN staff members killed by Israel thugs? I have not seen that report, so I can't speak to it, but I will look into it. Someone drop a link to the story in the comments, and I'll make sure I watch it tonight or read it tonight and see what I see and see if I can verify whatever's being said. I don't like to run with claims, so let's figure it out. Let's see here. Let's see. I have not seen this, but I'm still. Oof. But if you and staff have been killed, that's a tragedy, regardless. So I mean, I don't need to have seen it to know that. But we're going to look it up so I can give you the exact answer and maybe report on that story. C. Eccles, thank you so much for joining and becoming a member. Kimi Obayade Acosta, thank you so much for joining or gifting, memberships to the channel. You've always been a rider with us, but thank you for gifting 5 memberships to the channel. If anyone else wants to follow suit, please do. Anthony Shannon gifted a membership as well. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I got Shu with BB's name on it. Thank you. Right. The private meeting is what I talked about. And you're right. The private meeting is a big deal. It is a problem. It's not something that I think is okay. And it's not something that I support necessarily. It depends on what are we talking about in there. The Gidu and Justin show says, or Jidu and Justin show says, Kamala needs to call a ceasefire as Fresh Start with Muslim voters. If Kamala Harris started right now calling for a ceasefire, a full ceasefire, the whole game would change. She would get so much support. She would regain all the trust that has been lost almost. And I'm not saying that that's fair either. Voters be fickle as hell. But it would go a long way toward repairing her image. And also, it's the right thing to do. We should be calling for a ceasefire, not because it helps your career. You should call for a ceasefire because we need Palestinian babies to stop dying. That's the only way it's going to happen. Glenn Greenwald says that those calling into question J.D. Vance's populism are repeating talking points. So, Glenn Greenwald is right sometimes when he makes these points about the media, but he also goes too far. And I have found him to be overly personal and ad hominem and disrespectful and really just disgusting. So I'm gonna pass on a Glenn Greenwald interview, but I will report things that he says because that's our job. We got more questions and comments coming in. I'm trying to get as many of them as possible. Arthur Fletcher just gifted 5 memberships to the channel. Thank you, Arthur Fletcher. You're so appreciated. Thank you so much. Rachel just gifted 5 members to the channel. Thank you so much. We're so grateful. Glenn Greenwald. Oh, we said that one. Yep. Kamal, thank you so much for the generous sticker. Thank you, my brother. Thank you, Jazz LP. That's why you're my peoples. Matthew James. Why do you think so many Black churches are silent with genocide occurring? Because Black churches have been co-opted. You know what? Let me take that back. Black churches have been the most radical spaces ever, but they've never been all like that. More now, more then than now, but lots of black spaces were always about more of the spiritual than the political. Some of these black churches I feel like they just want to go to church every Sunday and have a good time. It seems like a big concert. It's like the target of churches. And it's more gaudy and more ostentatious and less political. Now, there's some who are on the ground with a prophetic spirit and voice. I love them. I respect them, but I just wish I could see more of that. And an example of that is what you're talking about here, Matthew. You said, why do you think so many black churches are so silent with genocide occurring? Whew, I wish I had a great answer. I think we've been trained, one, to not think internationally, and two, I think the black church's connection to Israel is so deeply rooted culturally and what they think is spiritually, that it's hard to get them to say anything against Israel. We talked about this. I'm just saying if there's anything else. Okay, I think that's all. I think that's all of them. All the comments, all the questions that we're going to read. Let me just double check. Danny C just gifted 10 memberships to the channel. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful. Arthur Fletcher gifted 5, of course. Thank you so much. Yep, I think that's the last one, y'all. All right. Ali Abu Naima. Again, another person I've scheduled, I've booked, we've talked to. We're gonna get Ali on very, very soon. Ali Abu Naima is going to be on very, 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 very soon. I promise you that. All right, family. That's it for night school tonight. I want to thank you for watching. I want to thank you for supporting the channel. Hit the like button if you haven't already. Let the YouTube algorithms know where you stand and that you like us more than that corporate media mess. Hit the subscribe button. Become a subscriber, which allows our social media footprint to expand and allows us to do the work we really are called to do. And that's the work of liberation, the work of freedom and justice. Also, family, before we go, I want to encourage everybody to hit the join button, become a monthly subscriber to the channel. It only costs $3.99 a month, and it builds us. It gives us a shot to be competitive against the big outlets. It gives us a shot to develop carpet, or not carpet, but studio flooring. It gives us a shot to buy new technology. It gives us a shot to expand our staff. We can do all of those things, but only with your support, because again, we aren't underwritten by a corporate outlet. We do not get our money from a private donor. I do this work because it is work that needs to be done. It's that simple. So in light of that, I ask everybody to donate what they can to help support us. Go to the join button. If you can become a bronze member or you become a platinum member or anything in between, we are grateful. Also, actually, before we go, also, you can support the channel with a Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, or Zelle donation. I know some people can't hit that join button just yet. They're subscribers, and you should subscribe, but they don't have the resources to commit every month to the same amount. So I say, fine, use Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, or Zelle. Shoot us a note about what you're donating to, or what you want to hear more from, or just send us a heart or black fist, whatever, man. Just show that you love us the way we love you. And that's not financial. You can hit the like button to show love. You can hit the subscribe button to show love. You can share the content to show love. But if you want to show love through financial donations, which we desperately need, please hit the join button over on YouTube or come here on this platform, these platforms, and go to Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, or Zelle and drop whatever matters. If you send us $1 million, we will do a backflip. If you send us $1, we will do a backflip and be equally grateful. I promise you. I know it sounds wild, but we really appreciate what you do, and no amount is too small, no amount is too big. Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, or Zelle. If everybody watching right now were to send just $10, if everybody watching right now that hasn't made a monthly contribution were to make a monthly payment right now through night school, just call it tuition. Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, Zelle. Everybody watching right now were to donate $10, we would meet our financial goals for the month. We would meet all of our goals. We'd be able to invest and build forward. So please consider dropping $10 over to Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, Zelle. And if you can't, that's okay too. Again, this is not just about money. In fact, it's not about money at all. It's about money to the extent that we need your support. But at the end of the day, we're going to be all right, because we're going to keep fighting and building. But please, we do need the support of the grassroots. So thank you for watching again, and I'll see y'all soon. Again, $10 will help us a long way. We got a couple questions coming in. Um, Rachel said they're boosting Rolando's question. Rose Billy said, I have a few questions still. Apparently, I missed a question from Rolando. I'm gonna look and see. Matthew James just donated 10 memberships. Matthew James, thank you so much. You have no idea what this means. Thank you. We're so grateful. Uh Ali Abunema, we'll talk. Yeah, I said yes, we're going to bring him in. I see. I don't see the question. Anthony Washington, welcome as a new member. I don't see it, y'all. Well, I maybe somebody's gonna boost it for me. Hold up, I'm looking. I'm looking, y'all. I'm looking. Please check Orlando DD's queue. Also, Roots Metals. Thank. Okay, I'm looking. Can someone paste it again in the comment section? I'm looking. Literature knowledge. Thank you so much for joining. I'm looking, y'all. I am looking. Y'all got me looking here. Bullet said, "What do you think of the possibility of a third-party coalition forming like France did?" Is that Rolando's question? If that's Rolando's question, just type yes. This is Rolando's question. Let me know it's Rolando's question. Either way, I'm going to answer it. Uh, you know, um, um, I think it's necessary. I think between Claudia and Cornell and Jill, the three of them need to get together in a room, figure out, as John Jackson said, or George Jackson, excuse me, not John Jackson, as George Jackson said, settle your quarrels. I I think that, and not all of it is personal, but to the extent that it is, um, I think this idea um, of third party voting is necessary, and I think third party building is necessary. But at this moment right here, we have an opportunity to send a message to the world that Democrats aren't the only game in town, and that they are invincible, they are beatable. Joe Biden is not around. Donald Trump may not win. So what would it mean to have a unified party, a single unified party of third party options, and we nominate somebody and we fight and we win? And then after we fight and win that nomination process, now you take Jill Stein or Cornel West or Claudia, whoever, right? You take them and you hold space. You hold space for them to be the representative, not just of their specific party, but of all three. Like, I wanted Cornel West to be the unifier and come out on the Green Party for that reason. Because if Cornell's on the Green Party, that means he's representing the People's Party. That means he's representing the communist, or socialist movement. He's representing all these things. We need a single person, and not just for this election. We need it for all the time, but more importantly, we need it for this election because of the high stakes and the vulnerability of our open enemy. I think we can win this thing, y'all. And by we and win, I'm not talking about making a Democrat president. I'm talking about a more ambitious freedom dream than that. Whoops, I hit the wrong button. I'm gonna stop it now. But I'm sleepy as hell. Somebody pointed out. So I'm gonna talk to y'all tomorrow. But thank y'all for watching. Exactly. Wrong button as always. I hate y'all. I hate all of y'all. Chad, they keep letting me near the buttons. This is they keep leaving me unsupervised. This is what happens. Anyway, y'all, I think that's it for the Q&A. Thank y'all for watching. Again, hit the join button, become a member of the channel if you can. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Those don't cost you a thing. Share the videos. Those don't cost you a thing. Feel free to hit our Cash App up, our PayPal, Venmo, or Zelle. But beyond that, money's not the most important thing. It's important, but it's not the most important thing. So in addition to, or rather than focusing on that, let's focus on how we can spread the word about this program and how we can find other grassroots media projects and come together. You talk about coalitions. Let's find out how we can create a network of independent media programs. Let's figure out how we can share and stream content. Let's figure out how we can strike a blow toward freedom. Anyway, family, love y'all. Appreciate y'all. I'll see y'all tomorrow. Peace.